Welcome back to this Killick Explains short series on key pensions questions. This is number 2. Number 1 was, do we need a pension? To which I said the answer is yes in most cases. This is number 2, which is about what has changed recently. I'm in the summer of 2023 as I shoot this, so the rules did change reasonably recently, and it's worth just recapping how and what some of the benefits of those changes might be. So the spring 2023 budget was a pretty big one. The aim of it, according to the politicians, was to bring certain key staff working for the NHS out of retirement, to encourage them back into the workplace, if you like. So the pensions rules were changed quite substantially, okay? And I would say that overall, the changes amount to an increase in the attractiveness of pensions as a savings vehicle, depending on what level of earnings you're saving at, if you like. So what do we got? Well, first of all, the rules changed in terms of the amount of money that could go in, the annual allowance, if you like. Now, the annual allowance is capped at an amount. That amount is subject to some affordability tests, so I'm simplifying quite a few rules here. But essentially, previously, prior to the last budget, the maximum annual allowance at school was £40,000. For 2023-24, that's become £60,000. All right, and that's quite a substantial uplift. It's still subject to affordability criteria, but the good news is you can still carry forward 3 years, up to 3 years of previously unused allowances. So someone looking to catch up on their pension contributions can still do so, and we've got a new higher level for the annual allowance going forward. Now, I accept a future government may change the rules again, but for the time being, that is quite useful for people trying to do a bit of pensions catch up. So what about the penalties attached to pensions? And again, previously we had this thing called the lifetime allowance, and that basically capped the level of benefits that could be withdrawn tax efficiently from a pension at just over £1 million. Now, if you were able to get what's called protection at a slightly higher level, previous lifetime allowance levels, if you like. But the bottom line was, if you breached either the basic lifetime allowance or a protected level of lifetime allowance, you could have been subject potentially to a 55% tax on lump sums and a 25% tax on income. Not good. Well, basically, if you allow me to just short circuit the regulatory technicalities, essentially that has gone. There is no longer a penalty attached to withdrawing benefits over the old lifetime allowance, or indeed a protected version of it. All right. Now, on to higher earners then. So higher earners got some benefits from these budget changes, insofar as in the old days, pre-budget, the annual allowance was tapered. Basically, there were tests applied, but the annual allowance was tapered. So that 40,000 I mentioned was chopped down over an income level of around £240,000, such that the most you could contribute to a pension as a high earner, nice work if you can get it, you might say, was £4,000 at around the £312,000 mark. Now, this won't apply to everyone watching the video, so I won't labour it, but essentially the tapering I just described only kicks in above 260,000 now, not 240. Okay, the tapering is down to a higher amount, 10 rather than 4, and you hit the maximum taper of £360,000, not 312. So good news there. Now, what are the key takeaways from all this, basically? Well, pensions always were pretty tax efficient, and in video 1, I cover why and how. Now, thanks to the last set of changes, they're just a bit more so, and there is more scope for people who feel their pensions were underfunded to catch up without having to sweat about breaching the lifetime allowance, as was the case in the old days, if you like. They are still fully inheritable. Now, the people that inherit an untapped pension, if you like, may end up paying income tax. Not usually if the person with the pension dies age less than 75, but yes, if they're over 75, so there's a technicality there, but it's income tax that's potentially levied on amounts drawn down from that pension by your heirs. There is no inheritance tax ramification. And that means that the funds, as pension funds, remain outside of a death estate for inheritance tax purposes. And none of that changed. Now, I covered a lot of ground there, so you might want to know a bit more. 3 sources. There is killick.com/learn, the tax effective savings tab on the left there. There are some guides. A couple of them deal with the area I've just talked about, pensions, and talk about some of the recent changes. The tax effective savings guide, for example, those are editor@killick.com. There are 6 in total. And then there's our quarterly magazine, Confidant. The last issue contains some good stuff on some of the recent pension changes. And that, again, would be editor@killick.com.